last storyteller. You guys ready? I'm super excited. So, next up we have Austin Sorette, who is kind of one of the OG storytellers for Long Story Short. There are a few folks who told stories like way early on when like 25 people came. And Austin is definitely been with the series for a while. He's done a lot of things. So let's hear about some of the things since I've last seen him. Austin is a writer and a teacher. He lives and works in Maine. He's written for local publications, including the Portsmouth Herald, Foster's, PortsmouthNH.com, The Wire, RIP. He recently wrote his first book, a science fiction comedy titled Reason to Be, and released it through his publishing imprint, UFXO Publishing. In case you're wondering, that is available on Amazon. Again, Reason to Be. Tonight's story is based on an essay that he's written for a book in progress called Grandpa Hockey Puck. And like the other stories in this collection, Austin uses humor and self-deprecation to explore life through food. His story is about a spontaneous move to California, a mysterious Thanksgiving dish, and a literal cold turkey sandwich. Closing us out for tonight, please give a warm welcome to Austin Sorette.
Thank you. The best part about going last is that no matter how much you drink, you end up sweating it all out at the end. So I was born and raised in New Hampshire, and yeah. Wait for the qualifier, sir. and we lived in as middle of the road as middle class can get. You know, house in the middle of the street, 2-car garage, 2 dogs. It was, when I was growing up, I just felt like my life was just one big cliche that I used to see in movies all the time. And so when I graduated high school, I wanted to do the least cliched thing that I could do as a young man who was disenfranchised and searching for himself. And so I landed on moving to Southern California. And so I gave up all the comforts and uprooted myself across the country to a place where I didn't know anybody and nobody knew me. And at first it was solitude and bliss. And then about a month of not developing a social life, that bliss kind of turned into boredom. And then in about 2 months, that boredom turned to isolation. And not having a social life was depressing enough, but what was even more depressing is that I couldn't find any weed out there. And I know that some of you are thinking, well, Austin, it's weeds all over the place in California. It's, rains nuggets out there. And I wouldn't know, first of all, because it never rained when I was there. And secondly, if that was true, that's probably why the state is constantly on fire. So, I didn't have much of a social life, but the only friend that I had made out there was my next door neighbor, and his name was Stiven. And Stiven was sort of like the West Coast Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld. He had money, but I didn't know what he did for work, and he just had all this hipstery knowledge about Australian red wines and Nick Cave's piano playing style on his solo albums, and it did legitimately get to the point where I was locking my door because I just imagined him just bursting through and rummaging through my fridge while he's, telling me about some business scheme that he's got, a quick way to make some cash. And so about 3 months after my move, homesickness finally hit me when I found out I couldn't fly back east to go to Thanksgiving with my family because I didn't have any money. And again, growing up in New Hampshire, like Thanksgiving is just like the quintessential, like middle class Hollywood, just boring repetition, the turkey, the stuffing, the cranberry sauce, the canned yams. To me, like the epitome of middle class living is just canned yams. And so a couple days before Thanksgiving, I was coming home and I was ready to put my keys in the door, and the jingle of my keys was like a Pavlov's dog response for Stiven. So he whips his door open and says, "Austin, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?" And I explained the situation to him, and I was like, just go to In-N-Out Burger, I guess. And he's like, "Don't do that. Let me make you something instead." And I said, "No, you don't have to do that. That's fine, man. It's all good." And he just goes, No, you came out here for a new experience. I'm going to make you some food. You're going to have a non-traditional Thanksgiving. And he was right. I didn't want to be rude, and so I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "The only condition that I have is that you can't ask me what I'm going to make you." And I didn't like that. But he was right. Like, that's why I moved out there. So I was like, "Oh, okay, mystery meat." And so he's like, "Yeah, I'll start preparing it tonight." Boom, just, whatever. Just goes back to his house. The next day, I hear a knock on my screen door, and I had a regular door and a metal door that was kind of like a screen. And so I opened up the door, and nobody was there on the other side. It was just this pile of tinfoil on the ground. All right, so I open up the door, and I'm looking at it, and I notice there's a Post-it note on it that just says, "Don't ask any questions." And that was new because in my past experience, my mom would always leave like notes saying like, "Hope you enjoy the cookies, sweetheart, like, love you," like nothing that would be construed as like a veiled threat, kind of. And so I brought the food inside, and I just pulled the tinfoil back, and it was just this like mystery meat of just a carcass. It was beige with skin, and it was on this bed of curly kale with like those dopey turkey booties. He'd clearly gotten his food staging from like a Looney Tunes cartoon, like just. And I remember I was standing there looking at it for a few minutes, and eventually I was like, well, it's getting cold, like, it might be disgusting, but I don't want it to be disgusting and cold. But I realized that in order to excite my appetite for this mystery meat, that I needed to smoke some weed, but I didn't have any. So what I did was I pulled out this jar of K2 that I had, and I don't know if anybody knows. For those of you who don't know, K2 is this synthetic marijuana. You can get it legally at most like pipe shops and head shops, which, pipe shops, the pinnacle of FDA compliance. Any place where you can find like hunting knives and a SpongeBob SquarePants bong in the same glass case just screams government regulation. But I remembered I had watched a documentary about these people on parole who couldn't smoke weed because they were getting drug tested. So they would take this K2 instead as like an alternative, and then of course 6 weeks later, they'd be scratching their skin and having these like emotional like breakdowns, and that was kind of like a red flag. But in my brain at the time, I was thinking like, well, I'm not trying to like cover up any childhood trauma. Like, I'm just trying to make like The Simpsons a little funnier. So I figure if I eat the mystery meat, I might as well smoke. So I pull out this jar of K2, and I stuff it into a pipe, and it's all chemical, like Barney purple, and I was like, oh, this is the first, blah blah blah. So I started smoking it, and I had an anxiety attack immediately, just from my toes all the way up to my head. It was like getting engulfed by like the symbiote in Spider-Man 3, where I was just like, I'm a new person. And I was like just freaking out, just like looking at this thing, and all of a sudden I hear like a small yip in the background, like yip, yip. And then I realized that, I remembered in my psychosis that Stuyven had a dog. And so I had kind of put it together in my head, like mystery meat, like don't ask any questions. And so I was just literally like leaning and just staring at the plate and just being like, are you a dog? But then I kept hearing the yipping, and I realized that I was on drugs. And so, I just did to quell my paranoia. I went over to our shared wall. Not that that was weird or anything. And just I'm listening to the wall to hear for the dog on the other side, and it's pitter-pattering around and yipping and stuff like that. And I couldn't even breathe a sigh of release before I just hear like the pounding of God on my door, and I just freeze up immediately. And my first impulse was like, I'm just gonna play possum. So I had my arms right next to my sides, and I had my eyes closed like, if I can't see you, you can't see me. And I just hear to my right, I hear, Austin? And I look over, and I forgot to close the regular door. Like, I just closed the screen door, so Stuyven's just looking at me, and I'm just standing. And he's like, what are you doing? And it was like, rat in the wall. Just listening for a rat in the wall. And he said, yeah, that's weird. So what did you think of the dish that I gave you? And I said, well, I haven't gotten a chance to try it yet. And he had said, oh, yeah, come on, we'll try it together. So I let him into my house. And I pull out 2 forks, and I'm forking some of the meat off of this hip bone or whatever, and he goes, no, you first. I want to get your reaction for when you eat this food. So I just nothing I could do. I ate it, and it was herby, and it was buttery, and the skin was crispy, and like it was cooked well, like, and I was like, oh. Is this like chicken or something? He goes, no. I've never seen a chicken look like that before. And I was like, well, what is it? And he's like, I'll give you a hint. It jumps around. And the only thing I could hear, the only thing I was thinking at the time was like House of Pain. I was like trying to dissect like the lyrics, like the Da Vinci Code, like maybe there's some clue in there. And he's like, well, if you thought it was chicken, then you probably liked it. And I bet you never thought that rabbit would taste so good. And I'm still like, I'm already trying to have him not see my eyes vibrating. And I'm just like standing there like, and he goes, yeah, my wife and I, like, we have this at her family dinners and stuff, and we're actually about to go there right now. I got to go pack up really quick. So he's like scurrying around and like collecting all of his bags, but he's still just giving me unnecessary information the whole time. He's like, yeah, we get it at this market. Like sometimes the carcasses still have the heads on. Sometimes they still have the eyes in. It's super freaky to look out. And I'm just like, just in a panic, like the scream, the painting, like just in horror. And he just goes, happy Thanksgiving, and then just jumps down the staircase and gets in his car and drives away, and I'm just having this panic attack in the middle of my yard. And I really needed to go for a walk, so I started walking aimlessly around the neighborhood, just confused and just weirded out, and I ended up where, all confused people go at the local Target. And I'm in there, and people are still kind of scrounging around for like last minute like decorations and stuff like that. But I went right to the deli aisle and grabbed a pack of turkey slices, and I thought, I guess I'm just gonna have an old-fashioned Thanksgiving dinner. So I took the turkey back. I threw it on some white bread with like an American cheese and like a dot of mustard and I remember just having the sandwich, and I'm just sitting, and I'm looking out my window and like watching a palm tree and realizing in that moment how far away from home I really was. And so I had started crying, and eating this like really sad sandwich, and there's also like a dead rabbit on my counter still, and 9 months later, I kind of threw in the towel and I came back to New Hampshire. But I came back and really had like an understanding of life, and I think I took a lot more interest in people socially, and I was paying attention to people more, and realizing how grateful I was to have a friend base and a family base. How grateful I was to still have a weed dealer too. He still lives in Concord to this day. I'll give somebody a phone number after the show. And I never smoked the K2 again. And since 2011, I haven't missed a single Thanksgiving, and I'm always the first one that jumps to the canned yams. Thank you for your time.
You guys, let's hear it for Austin Sorette. And do not do that K2. No.